So on top of being Aboriginal, being a woman, of course, does come across a great deal of barriers that you have to overcome. So in my line of work, even as an Aboriginal businesswoman, you know, there is such a low percentage of Aboriginal women who run their own business in Australia. It's growing gradually, but there has to be a market for us, and those markets are not always there because, again, the chief market that we should feel confident in is 3.4% of the Australian population. So what have we got to, you know, where is our markets and that sort of thing. But so you have to be a brave soul to be Aboriginal and to try and lead in a market. There's no doubt it's difficult. I've been in education for 8 years as well, running an online Aboriginal education company, and have found it incredibly difficult to get in there. So the one great thing about being in a collective culture is that we really support each other. And we have an incredible amount, really credible amount of networks, and very strong networks. And I know in the projects I run, in the behaviour project, the Culture Eco project, one of the non-Aboriginal psychologists is on my team. She said, Nola, would you, if you went anywhere in Australia, anywhere, you'd never been there before, didn't know a soul, would you be able to get a bed with an Aboriginal family? And I said, 100%, 100%. Make a few calls and I would have a bed, no worries. And she said, and she just asked that question. It has always stuck with me that, you know, it's surprising that everyone can't do that, but of course, not everyone can.
It's that supportive community, it's that supportive environment, right? Looking out for one another is there.
Yeah, some of the statistics, of course, for our people are awful, you know, no doubt about it. There's a lot of trauma there that we have to try and overcome, and so we have to be strong for each other. And when you've got when you look at things, I was looking at data, the other statistic the other day, which really disturbed me, and that was the bush tucker industry, bush food industry in Australia, which is all comes from, it absolutely 100% all comes from Aboriginal people.
That's right.
We actually, the business percentage we own in that is 1%. So of the entire bush food industry, we own 1%. We're involved in 1%.
That's terrible. Absolutely. And we need to talk about these things. You know, it needs to be raised, and I think people need to be aware. I mean, just shutting the door and pretending that it's not happening doesn't change the situation, right?
And actually, the government constantly putting up funding for the bush food industry and bush tucker and new products and that sort of thing. That's helpful. It's only helpful for those that actually own the land, and that's not the Aboriginal people. So.
No, there's a lot of change, and there's a lot we need to build, and a lot of work needs to be done across the board. And you know, you've raised some really, really important points here today, Nola, and I so appreciate that, because we need to talk about it. We need to be having these conversations to try and see how we can make those changes across the board. It's just those statistics are just not good enough.
I think, you know, no, they're not. But I think also that it has to be done in partnership and together. And, you know, my knowledge or Aboriginal knowledge and non-Aboriginal knowledge have to join forces on this issue. And, you know, but we also have to be accepting that the other person behaves and thinks differently. So those are the, you know, I think if we start, for me, I have learnt in all the research we've done, is that once you understand the other person's behaviour and why it's different to yours, that it takes the fear out of it. Because those that behave differently to you, it creates fear.
Mm.
And so, you know, in the research that we've been doing, it really has highlighted to me, which I didn't know it would do that in the beginning, but we've been doing it for 6 years. So is that understanding each other's behaviour, understanding why we think, behave and learn differently, and how we do that is a remarkable way to create empathy for each other. It's a remarkable way to say, okay, so if I bring that Aboriginal person into this workplace, I'm going to have to change a few things because they learn differently. They present information differently. They trust differently. They even behave differently in the workplace, in the lunchroom. You know, so all these things, behaviour is how we learn, think and act. So that's a great
But you're right, that's the first step to understand the fundamentals of behaviour and how people learn and how people engage. And creating that empathy is the very beginning. That needs to happen for everything else to happen.
Agreed.
Right? That needs to be there to create a safe work environment, to create a safe place where people want to come to work. Right? That's the basis for a lot of these issues. I think if we can focus that, if we can do one thing, or if people watching today can take one thing away, we need to open up and start having these conversations and saying, tell me more and understand more about the culture, understand more about the individual and how they learn, how they interact, how they communicate, so that we can actually bring that level of inclusion within the workplace to make those minor changes to help obviously start making the larger changes that need to happen.
Absolutely.
I think that's
right. I think that's the greatest gift we could give each other.
Great. Thank you so much, Nola, for sharing your knowledge and insights around inclusion with us today. It sparked some really good conversation and raised some really, really important points. We appreciate your time. So Next Tech, we partner with Australian businesses, both big and small, as well as government organisations, to train and upskill teams. We're committed to supporting that learning culture. The goal is encapsulated in our mission, which is we partner people with training to unleash the world's potential. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you in next month's Industry Insights session. Thanks so much, Nola.
Thank you. Injamara.